So in this video I'm just going to give you a short introduction to the software of Autograph. Autograph is now free from Complete Maths. You can get to it from Autograph Maths right here, and you can just download it from free from this page here. So when Autograph loads, it loads up like this. There are 4 different page view types. You can have a statistics page, a 2D graph, a 3D graph, or a complex numbers page. I'll give you a quick tour of all of them. Starting with the 2D graph page, this is the one you're going to use most. This starts out looking like this. Some key points in it. You can enter a point or points like this using the point mode. You can then go back and you can select things like this using the select mode. If you right click, you then get various different options come up. This one looks like I can create a straight line for it, but then it asks me, do I want a straight line or a line segment? I'll just go for a line segment. I'm able to do things like a perpendicular bisector, which does look a little bit strange. That leads us straight onto a second thing, is that actually the dimensions here, we're not looking at squares. So you can use the equal aspect mode to square up the page, and then we can see that we do in fact have a perpendicular bisector. One of the things you can do with this is dynamic software. So as I move that around, it does in fact move the perpendicular bisector around. Okay, so we can do all sorts of things like that. If I want to get rid of something, I can just use the eraser and I get all the way back to here. Okay, lots of the time, especially at A-level maths, you're going to be doing equations. So we go to the enter equation dialog box up here. There's 2 versions you'll see as I type things, how to enter equations. So I'll just go for y equals x squared plus 2 to begin with. As I type that, it's enabled quite intuitively. If I want x cubed, I just type xxx, just type it 3 times x to the 4 is going to be type it 4 times, and so on. So I'm going to get back to x squared plus 2, which gives us a graph looking like that. I'm able to use the hand to move the graph around. I can zoom in on the graph. I can stretch the graph. If I particularly wanted it to fit the page, I can move it around. There's 2 ways of measuring angles in Autograph. You can go for degrees, and so if we did that, then I'm going to just click on here. I'm going to change my equation. So the sine x graph would look something like this. Where's it gone? Weirdly, it looks like a straight line. Of course it does, because we're in degrees. So if I now zoom out, then we get to see a bit more of the sine x graph, and here it comes. Okay. Another clever thing in Autograph, you can see the numbers aren't quite what we would want here. You can set it up so that you can edit the axes. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to change the numbers, I'm going to change the lines as well to the 180, excuse me, the numbers every 90, I'm going to do the lines every 90 as well. For my lines going horizontally, I'm going to go every 0.5 again. The other version of this is that I can do it in radians. Radians again are nice. I'm just going to square it up. You can see there's my squares. So we can do trigonometry in radians as well. Again, you'll probably see that the numbers don't quite line up very nicely here. We can fix that. Autograph, you can do intelligent ranges. So you can just type that in and it will do those for us there. Most likely, however, I'm going to want to have my numbers in those, my lines going in those things as well. So as well as going in nice numbers on the x and y axis, I'm going to do it so that my vertical lines and my numbers are in nice numbers as well. To do that, I'm just going to type pi divided by 2. I'll have my lines going every pi divided by 2 as well, which brings us to there, and you can see it then displays it nicely for us. What we can also do from here, another nice feature of Autograph, is that we can select the graph. You could right click on it and see what different things you can get from there. You can see there's various options here. With Autograph, the right-click menu bar changes depending on what you click on. It's dynamic as well. One of the things we can do here, I'm not going to right-click on it. I'm going to click on this button up here, which is the gradient function. In fact, I'll also show you the slow plot version. So that if I turn the slow plot on, then this will slowly plot the graph from left to right. Okay, so I'm now going to do the gradient of the sine graph. And when I do that, here we are plotting the gradient of the sine graph. The slow plot will stop at all the interesting points. So here we go, we've got a gradient of 0, so it stopped there for us. I'm going to click the space bar. We've got a maximum gradient, coming back to a gradient of 0, minimum gradient, and so on. So I'm just clicking my way through it. But it deliberately does that so that if you want to discuss these points with students, you're able to. One of the key things that I found useful to do when I'm using Autograph is to set myself up with a standard sort of page. I don't particularly like that we haven't got the square aspect view here. Maybe I want it zoomed out a little bit more to begin with. So what I would do is set that up, set myself up with a kind of a standard page for when I begin. So yeah, I'm happy with my numbers. My numbers are aligned every 1 and 1. I wish my graph went a little bit bigger. So I'm going to do it -8 to +8, and I'm going to make it square again. Now you can see that in doing that, I've lost my odd numbers here. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to set those back so they're every 1 again, so we can see everything. Another thing that is useful is to set the snap settings to every 1. What does this do? Well, this means that if we put a point in here, it snaps it onto the nearest whole coordinate. That's useful because most of the time, if you're trying to demonstrate something, you're going to be using whole coordinates. You don't want numbers a little bit off. So yeah, I would set that up like that. I would then save it as a standard page, and that's the one. Every time I would open Autograph, I'd go and open that one, especially. You can see I didn't really think about whether I want degrees or radians there. It might be good to set that up in degrees. You might also want to change the appearance of the key so that it's a decent size. So the font there is decent size. You can also set it so that there's a different number of entries available in the key. So down here, whether we have this box big or small. You can also in here, if you wanted to set it up so that students you wanted them to predict what the equation of a graph was, you can do it so that the key vanishes completely, and then later you could reveal what the equation of the graph was. You may have spotted in there, in our 2D graph page, we could have chosen to go with a polar grid as well by clicking on this polar grid icon up here. There's other options where we can get rid of the graph completely. We can do all kinds of things there. So that's what the 2D graph page looks like. For the 3D graph page, you get something like this. Now I'm clicking and dragging the mouse. You can move that box around. You can see that the menus have all changed up here because we've gone 3D. We can get rid of the box. We can have a kind of a grid behind it. We can have both if we wanted to. We can have different colour backgrounds. I usually just leave it in this original setup mode. You can enter equations just as you'd expect. Of course, this time we've got 3 coordinates. So I'm going to go with x plus y equals 2z, something like that, which gives us we've got a straight line. Don't know why I'm surprised. Of course, you could hopefully see how this would then relate to if you were doing vectors, vector equations of a plane, and so on and so on. The statistics page gives us a page looking like this. Again, all the menus have changed. You can see how we could do things with box and whisker diagrams. It does histograms quite nicely, much nicer than Excel does them. Cumulative frequency graphs, all sorts of things here. Most of the time we're going to be going here to either enter raw data enter group data. This is where we're going to begin. You can even enter a probability distribution. I'm just going to go with a simple one there. So there's a whole statistics side of things here. One of the newer features of Autograph is that it has a complex numbers page. So here we're able to enter complex numbers. It seems to me that the easiest way of doing it is to just put a point on there and edit that point. So if I wanted this to be z is equal to 2 plus 3i, then I can do that. I could enter another value, put this one down here. You're then able to, you could select both, and then you're able, that brings up all the options to add the complex numbers. I'm going to just move this down so we can see that. And again, as we said, this is all dynamic. So if you move one, the other one moves, and so on and so on. You might decide that instead of adding them, you want to multiply them and see what that does. I can see that one's gone off the page. So if I make that a bit smaller, hopefully we're going to bring it back on the page. There we go here. So we can talk about what happens to the angle as I change the angle of one of them. So that concludes, and that brings us to a general introduction, quite an in-depth introduction to the world of Autograph.